Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. Morning heat rolled off the asphalt outside Ridgeport Naval Base as Madison Cole adjusted her patrol cap and squared her stance at the main gate. Jacksonville humidity clung to her sleeves, but Maddie kept her voice steady, the same greeting, the same firm cadence, car after car. Check the ID, match face to photo, scan the hologram, return with a nod, keep the line moving. Gate duty looked simple from a distance, but to her it was the first layer of security that made everything else work. Trucks rattled toward the docks, a squad jogged along the perimeter road, and a couple of Marines traded quiet jokes about nothing ever happening here. Maddie ignored the chatter. She counted vehicles in silent rhythms, reset her posture every few minutes, and recited general orders under her breath when the boredom tried to creep in. She wasn't here to coast. She was here to show that showing up with consistency still mattered. Next vehicle, she called, taking a civilian contractor's badge, eyes moving from lamination to microprint to the slight crease near the photo, the kind of detail that tells you whether a card has lived in a wallet or in a printer. She handed it back. "You're good to go." The man muttered thanks and rolled through. Down the lane, Staff Sergeant Marcus Dean watched from a patch of shade near the guardhouse, arms folded, saying nothing. Maddie knew he noticed everything, boots, bearing, tone. He didn't hand out praise, and she didn't expect any. Doing small things right was the only approval she trusted. Last night in the barracks, Specialist Elena Murphy had told her she'd turn into a board if she kept standing that straight. Maddie had only smiled. Boards don't scan IDs under pressure. Boards don't catch the tiny flaws that stop bigger mistakes. A black SUV eased into the line 2 lanes over, just another vehicle in the glare. Maddie clocked it, then looked away. Process the car in front of you, that was the rule. She finished with a petty officer, returned the card, and took a slow breath. On the far side of the gate, a young private, Noah Daniels, fresh from training, stumbled through his checklist, cheeks red. Maddie resisted the urge to step in. Let him learn the rhythm. Still, when his lane paused and he glanced over, she lifted a finger, a small cue, slow down, look at the eyes, not the hands. He nodded once and tried again. By mid-shift, sweat had traced a line down her back, and the Florida sun made the guard rails throw hard glare. Lieutenant Bryce Holloway walked past with a folder under his arm, offered a brisk, carry on, and disappeared toward the admin wing. Radios crackled with routine codes. Somewhere beyond the gate, Building Echo 12 kept its work behind closed doors. Maddie's father used to say respect shows up when you don't chase it. She had repeated that line so many times it felt like part of her uniform. If nobody noticed her work today, fine. The base would still be safe, the line would still move, and the first link in the chain would still hold. Next vehicle, she said again. A sailor with salt and pepper hair passed over his ID. Maddie matched the face, checked expiration, compared the security strip, and handed it back. Proceed. The lane rolled forward. A breeze lifted the edge of her sleeve and was gone. She reset her stance, eyes level, ready for the next car, the next decision, the next small chance to do the job exactly right. She didn't have to wait long, the next decision arrived behind tinted glass as the black SUV rolled up to her lane and stopped without hurry. Maddie took the ID through the window, felt the weight of the silence, and read the name, Commander Nathan Briggs. The photo matched the hard lines of the man in front of her, close-cropped hair, steady eyes, uniform squared away. Protocol first. She examined the hologram, checked expiration, confirmed access level, and lifted her gaze. "You're cleared to proceed, sir." He didn't move. Engines idled in the heat. Radios hissed in short bursts. Across the checkpoint, conversations thinned to a hush like someone had turned a dial. The driver's door opened. Briggs stepped out, boots landing solid on the pavement. Maddie kept her posture, chin level, hands still. Commanders didn't exit their vehicles at the gate unless something was wrong. He closed the door, walked the few steps toward her post, and stopped at arm's length. For a breath, no one spoke. Then he raised his hand and gave a crisp salute, clean, deliberate, unmistakable. Maddie's body snapped to attention before her mind caught up. She returned the salute, exact and steady. The world narrowed to the angle of her wrist and the line of his gaze. No one said a word. A petty officer 2 cars back whispered, "Did that just," and cut himself off. The salute held a second longer, then dropped. Briggs's mouth didn't form a smile, but something in his eyes changed as if a decision had been made elsewhere. He nodded once, turned, and got back in the SUV. The vehicle rolled through. Noise returned in fragments, air brakes, boots on gravel, the distant call of a cadence run. Maddie exhaled once and moved the line. Next vehicle. Her voice didn't crack. She checked an ID, then another, riding the muscle memory that kept everything in place. Marcus Dean watched her a few beats longer than usual, then shifted his attention to the flow. Elena would joke later that a statue had come to life at the gate and told a commander what respect looks like. Maddie didn't feel like a statue. She felt like a hinge, small but necessary. By afternoon, the story had leaked past the guardhouse. A corporal from supply passed with a grin he tried to hide. A Marine in the far lane mouthed, "No way," when he thought she wasn't looking. Maddie kept the tempo of the lane. Let others talk. Don't chase the noise. Respect shows up when you don't chase it. End of shift, the barracks smelled like detergent and floor wax. Elena tossed a rolled sock at her. "You're trending, Maddie." Group chats. Memes. Somebody put a little crown over your cap. Maddie set her cap on the locker shelf. It happened. That's all. Elena leaned back on her elbows. People do 20 years and never see that. Don't shrink from it. Maddie tied her laces slower than usual. I won't parade it either. Morning came with a summons. Dean stood behind his desk, a single page in his hand. Cole, report to Building Echo 12 tomorrow at 0800. Temporary detail. Commander's request. He didn't soften the news or dress it up. He didn't have to. Maddie read the line twice, felt the weight of the seal at the top, and handed it back. Understood. Dean's eyes held hers. You earned eyes on you. Now you earn the right to keep them there. She nodded, saluted, and stepped out. The base looked different when you knew you'd be walking into rooms you'd only heard about. Hallways that used to be background now felt like routes on a map. Echo 12 sat deeper inside the fence line, layered behind access points Maddie had never crossed. That night, she lay on the bunk staring at the ceiling tile with the small nick near the fluorescent light. Elena's voice drifted from the other rack. You belong there because you act like you belong wherever you do the job right. Maddie didn't answer. She didn't need words more than she needed rest. Dawn painted the asphalt pale gray. At the gate, the first cars queued in quiet lines. Maddie worked the checklist with the same care as always, knowing it might be her last shift here for a while. Noah in the next lane looked steadier today. He caught her eye, she gave him the same small signal, slow down, check the eyes, trust the process. He took a breath and did it right. When the relief guard arrived, Maddie logged off, cleared her station, and touched the metal frame of the booth the way some people tap a doorframe before leaving home. The SUV from yesterday passed in the outbound lane. Through the glass, Briggs glanced her way and gave the smallest nod, approval without ceremony. Maddie didn't raise a hand. She didn't need to. The gate kept turning, the base kept moving, and her next post waited behind a door marked with a number and a rule she intended to honor: do the small things right so the big things never fall apart. The door with the number came sooner than she expected, a gray slab at the end of a cool corridor that smelled like coffee and machine oil. Maddie showed her orders at the checkpoint, felt the scanner buzz against the laminate, and stepped into Echo 1-2. The lights were bright, the rooms windowless, the voices low and quick. Officers moved with folders tucked tight, radios murmured coded traffic, and whiteboards carried grids of times and initials that meant everything to the people who worked here. A petty officer pointed to a small desk outside an inner office. "Cole, you'll stage inbound briefs here. Log changes. Don't guess. If you're not sure, ask." She nodded. "Don't guess. Do it right." Bryce Holloway stopped by with a stack of schedules. "Meetings, flight windows, deconflicts. If a name changes on this page, something shifts somewhere else." He tapped the top form once. "Precision here keeps helicopters where they're supposed to be." Maddie filed the packets, made a checklist, and ran her finger down each line. Start times, end times, initials, rooms. She put a small dot by every item she had verified and left blanks where something needed confirmation. No hero moves. Just clean passes, one after another. The tempo pressed. A supply memo came through with a location code that didn't match the manifest. Maddie compared the digits twice, then a third time, and flagged it. She walked it to Holloway's door. "Sir, this code routes to the wrong bay." He checked, corrected it, and said, "Good catch." 2 words, no smile, but they landed like a weight removed. She logged the change, updated the copies, and notified the runner who had already laced his boots to deliver the old version. Small things right. By midday her eyes felt like sand. She pushed back from the desk, rolled her shoulders, and kept going. A captain from Air Wing tossed a briefing folder down a minute before the bell. "Room Bravo," he said, halfway out the door. Maddie checked the schedule. Bravo was already booked by Intel. She moved fast, slid Air Wing to Delta, swapped a minor sitrep to a side office, and keyed 2 quick notes so nobody lost a chair. 15 seconds later, the corridor filled with people heading to the briefing. No one bumped into anyone else. No one waited in the hall. The line kept moving. Holloway saw the flow and gave a brief nod she almost missed. Whispers existed here too. A chief petty officer muttered near the copier, "Commander handpicked a private to run traffic." Another answered, "He picked discipline. Rank comes later." Maddie didn't look up. She checked an initial against a signature, found they didn't match, and walked the paper back to have it signed correctly. No shortcuts. Late afternoon, she found the kind of error that doesn't look like an error until it does. 2 time blocks, same team, separated by 3 hours. A handwritten note on one read 2300. The typed line on the other read 0200. Someone had flipped a date when rolling over midnight. If left alone, one group would show for a brief with no presenter and a transport would spool without a crew. She brought it to the inner office. Briggs stood over a map with red markers. He didn't glance up. "What is it?" She set the folder on the corner. "Sir, time discrepancy. One reads 2300, the follow-on reads 0200, but the hand note shows 2300 becomes 0100, not 0200. The rollover is wrong." He read once, then again, and set the paper flat. "Who caught it?" "I did, sir." He considered her for a moment that stretched longer than the question required. "Correct it. Notify air, notify ground. Don't let the old sheet survive." "Yes, sir." She moved. Swap the header, reprint, stamp the corner with the new time, pull the old copies from 2 trays, tell the runner to shred what he just picked up, ping the captain she had rerouted earlier so he could adjust his prep. She logged each change in the margin along with her initials. When she looked up, the clock read 1841. Noise thinned as the building settled. Maddie stacked her remaining papers, squared the edges, and cleaned her station. Briggs passed on his way out, sleeves rolled, expression unreadable. He stopped, eyes flicking to the cleared desk and the small pile of obsolete sheets marked with a bold X. Discipline in detail, he said, not as a compliment but as a rule. Yes, sir. He paused. Keep it. Then he was gone. Outside, evening air held the last heat of the day. In the barracks, Elena listened with her chin in her hand while Maddie described nothing that sounded heroic and everything that felt heavy: numbers, rooms, initials, signatures. Elena grinned. You're steering a river no one sees. Maddie unlaced her boots. I'm just keeping it from jumping the bank. She lay back, eyes on the ceiling tile with the nick near the light, and replayed the rollover error in her head, step by step, like a drill. Tomorrow would bring another stack, another chance to get it right. She set her alarm and let the room go quiet, knowing that somewhere between midnight and dawn the big things would hold because the small things had not been allowed to slip. Between midnight and dawn, the big things held, until they didn't. At 0450 a radio burst cut through the corridor outside Echo 12, followed by quick steps and a door slamming open. Maddie was already at her desk, coffee cooling beside a stack of updated briefs. A petty officer shoved a folder across to her. Manifest mismatch on Nightfall team. 2 names double booked, 1 bird short, rooms over capacity. Wheels up -90. He was gone before she could ask a question. She opened the packet. The Air Wing roster showed 4 chalks, but the transport log showed 3 aircraft for the first window. In the conference grid, Room Bravo and Delta were both stamped for 0600 with different brief leaders. A side note said, spool spare at 0615, but the fuel list had no spare. The river was jumping the bank. Maddie pulled the whiteboard schedule closer, laid 3 pages side by side, and traced the flow with a pen. A rollover edit from last night had bumped 1 chalk forward but didn't move the corresponding crew. The room assignment had been swapped earlier to avoid an intel hold, but the follow-up copy hadn't reached Air Wing. She marked 4 red squares and circled the aircraft count. Then she stood and went straight to Holloway. Sir, we have a split. Chalk count is 4 but lift is 3, Bravo and Delta double booked, spare not fueled. We need to reflow in the next 30. Holloway scanned the pages, jaw set. You confident? Yes. He nodded once. Do it. I'll get you doors. He stepped into the hallway and barked for access while Maddie moved back to her desk. She called Air. Echo 12. Confirm you have only 3 aircraft hot for window 1. Affirmative. Spare pushed to 0715, no fuel at 0615. She keyed ground. We're moving Nightfall 2 from window 1 to window 2. Hold the team at staging, do not move to tarmac until you see the new sheet. She opened the room grid, slid Delta to 0615, moved a minor sitrep to a side room, and locked Bravo for Nightfall 1 only. She typed a single-line update for the runners and stamped the corner with the new time. No speech. No apology. Clear, readable, final. A chief stepped in, face tight. Who authorized this? Maddie didn't flinch. Lieutenant Holloway is getting doors. Commander's office will see the updated flow in 2 minutes. He looked past her as if waiting for someone older to appear. No one did. He left without a thank you. Holloway returned with keys. Briggs wants eyes in 5. Copy. Maddie printed the new packet, collated, and ran it down the corridor. Briggs stood with 2 officers over a stripped briefing map. He looked at the first page, then the second, then the aircraft count. What broke? A rollover moved chalk timing without moving crew. Room grid double booked from the intel swap, spare not fueled for the earlier slot. We pushed one chalk to window 2, shifted Delta by 15, protected Bravo for nightfall 1, and pinned ground until sheets matched. She kept it short. Briggs tapped the manifest. Anyone lose a seat? Negative. Order preserved, only timing adjusted. He met her eyes for a long beat. Any risk to the second window? Fuel covers it if the spare spool's at 0700. Air confirmed. He handed the packet back. Execute. She executed. Runners moved with fresh copies. Air confirmed the lineup by tail number. Ground echoed the hold, then the release. At 0558, the corridor filled with quiet footfalls. Teams filed past in order, no one milling, no one looking for a room that didn't exist. Doors opened when they should. Brief started on time. Maddie watched the clock roll to 0600 and felt the tension drop one notch. Back at the desk, the chief returned, less sharp. We didn't miss a step. He paused. Good work. It wasn't warm, but it was clean. She logged the changes with her initials and time stamps. Holloway leaned on the doorframe. You kept a roof on a moving train. She shook her head. We kept people from standing in the wrong hallway. He almost smiled. Same train, smaller headline. The radio clicked again. Tarmac to Echo 1-2. Nightfall 1 lifted. A second voice followed, room Bravo complete. Moving to staging for window 2. The pieces were back on track. Maddie's hands finally stilled. Briggs appeared at the corner of her vision. He didn't call her into the office. He didn't raise his voice. He just stopped by the cleared section of her desk where obsolete copies lay slashed with a bold X. You moved without guessing, he said. You fixed only what was broken. That's the job. Maddie nodded. Yes, sir. He held her gaze. Don't let the noise make you rush. Let the facts make you faster. Then he moved on. When the corridor emptied, Maddie took a breath she hadn't noticed she'd been holding. She looked at the clock, 0617, and at the board, now simple again. She capped her pen, stacked the remaining briefs for the next hour, and reset her chair. The building quieted to its steady hum. Outside, the base shifted into daylight. Inside, the big things held because the small things were put back in line, one decision after another, under a pressure no one would ever see on a ribbon. The day leveled out. The radio traffic settled into routine bursts, the board stayed clean, and the hallway outside Echo 1-2 lost its edge. Maddie kept her chair squared to the desk and worked through the follow-on updates with the same method that had carried the morning: check, confirm, log, and move the sheet only when the facts were solid. By mid-morning, Air Wing sent a short note, windows held. No delays. And ground added a second line that read like a quiet handshake, staging stable. She filed both where they belonged and let the clock do its slow work. Holloway stopped by with a dry, nice salvage, which in his vocabulary might as well have been a banner. The chief who had bristled earlier returned the borrowed pen he hadn't realized he'd taken, leaving it on the edge of her desk like a truce. Nobody made a speech. Nobody needed to. The absence of friction was the recognition. At chow, Elena slid onto the bench across from her. I heard your morning turned into juggling chainsaws. Maddie shrugged. More like picking up a ladder someone left crooked. Elena pushed a carton of milk her way. Same outcome. Nobody falls. On the way out, Noah caught up, a little out of breath. Ma'am, Maddie, sir, he gave up on picking a title. I slowed down like you said. Eyes first. It works. She kept her voice even. Keep doing it when nobody's watching. He nodded hard, like he was pinning that sentence to the inside of his cap. Back at Echo 1-2, Staff Sergeant Dean waited near the door, hands behind his back. Cole. He didn't smile, but his jaw wasn't set like a vice either. There was chatter this morning. I don't care about chatter. I care that teams got where they needed to go on time. He let that hang, then added, carry on. For Dean, that counted as a commendation you could frame. The afternoon brought admin weight, not drama, manifest reconciles, signature audits, a small tangle where a captain initialed the wrong line. Maddie walked the paper to the office, got the right ink on the right box, and logged the fix. Briggs passed only once, sleeve still rolled, a faint smudge near his cuff where a marker had fought back. He paused at the corner of her station. You kept scope, he said. You fixed the thing in front of you and nothing more. She answered simply, yes, sir. He tapped the obsolete stack slashed with X's. Teach that. She didn't think he meant a classroom. Still, an hour later, when Noah hovered near her desk pretending to study the board, she pushed her chair back and pointed to the grid. You see the lanes? He squinted. Looks like a mess till you know the pattern. It's not a mess. It's a sequence. When you're lost, find one anchor, time, tail number, room, and build out. And don't chase rumors on the radio. Chase confirmations. He repeated the words, quiet, like the cadence from morning runs. Near 1600, an email flashed from Command Group, CO's remarks, 1700, Echo 12 conference. Holloway read it over her shoulder. He's going to talk about the morning. She didn't ask how he knew. You could feel when the room would be asked to hold still. They filed into the conference at 16:59, the kind of early that means respect. The table wasn't full of rank for show, just the people who moved parts when parts needed moving. Briggs stepped in without a folder. He didn't clear his throat. Discipline is not a poster, he said. It's a sequence of small decisions executed on time under stress. He let the sentence stand there until the room finished hearing it. This morning, the sequence bent and did not break. That is not luck. That is work. He looked around, not for applause, but for ownership. If you saw a gap and closed it, keep doing that. If you waited for someone else to name the gap, learn the pattern. Then he turned slightly toward where Maddie stood along the wall. And if you moved because the facts told you to move, not because the room was loud, good. Keep that. He didn't say her name. He didn't have to. Heads angled in her direction on reflex and then away again, as if politeness had rules about how long a glance should last. Meeting over, chairs scraped back. People returned to their lanes. On the way out, Dean caught her elbow for a fraction. CO's office, 17:30. No explanation. At 17:29 she stood in the doorway, cap tucked under her arm. Briggs gestured to the chair but didn't sit. On his desk lay a single page, not thick enough to be complicated. Recognition, he said, flat, like a line item. Commanding officer's letter for exceptional duty. Not ceremony. Not today. Paper. He slid it to her. Words, simple and tight. Dates. The phrase, attention to detail under time pressure. Her name spelled right. She didn't smile. He didn't ask her to. This isn't a trophy, he said. It's a receipt. It says you were trusted and you delivered. People will test you more because of it. She answered the only way that fit. Understood. He nodded once. Good. Now go do the next small thing. She left the office with the letter in a plain folder. Outside, the sky over Ridgeport had gone that late-day copper that sticks to the edges of the hangars. She walked past the admin wing and turned toward the fence line on purpose. The gate pulled her like gravity, familiar ground, first lessons. At the booth, Noah was mid-shift, stand steadier. He saw her and almost straightened too much. She shook her head slightly. Don't pose. Do the job. He exhaled, smiled without showing teeth, and turned to the next car. "Good afternoon. ID, please." Maddie waited until the lane moved clean, then touched the steel frame the way she always did. Not superstition. Reminder. The first link in the chain had to hold so the rest could mean anything. Back in the barracks, Elena looked up from her phone. "So?" Maddie put the folder on the locker shelf. "Paper." Elena grinned. "Paper that says don't argue with Maddie's checklists." Maddie kicked off her boots and leaned back on a thin pillow, the hum of bass life in the walls. The day had bent and didn't break. Tomorrow would test the sequence again. She closed her eyes and let the quiet do its work, already hearing the click of the first decision she'd make in the morning and how the rest would fall into line if she kept her hands steady. The first decision clicked into place at dawn, just like she'd heard it in her head before sleep: stand up, lace boots, and carry the sequence forward without looking for applause. Ridgeport woke in layers, forklifts near the docks, cadence on the perimeter road, radios testing with the usual staccato. Maddie slid her cap on, tucked the plain folder with the letter deep in the locker, and let the door close on it. Paper could stay put. The work had places to be. Echo 1-2 was already humming. Holloway handed her a short stack. "Light load. Don't get sentimental." She smirked once. "Not my lane." The morning briefs lined up clean, with only the usual scuffs: a misspelled last name that could have derailed a manifest if it crossed the threshold, a room swap that needed a note in 2 places so a captain wouldn't wander. She fixed what needed fixing and ignored what didn't. Dean drifted by, eyes on the board, then on her. He gave the smallest nod and kept moving. In this building, that was a handshake. Near 0900, an email flashed: rotation, gate inspection, 1000. Holloway read it. "Take Noah. Make it a field lesson." Maddie checked the clock. Copy. A part of her welcomed the assignment like a cool drink: concrete lines, faces, the old ritual of eyes to hands to card to voice. They walked the spine road in even steps. At the booth, the relief guard signed off, Noah took the lane, and Maddie stood where she used to stand, 1 foot on the painted line, the whole base moving through a rectangle of glass. "You know the pattern," she said. "Eyes first. Don't rush because the line looks long. The line is always long." He breathed once, then worked. Contractor ID with a laminate starting to curl. He checked the microprint and saw it was fine. A sailor had a new beard within regs but a photo 3 years old. Noah compared bone lines rather than hair. He handed the card back with a steady, "Proceed." Maddie watched without hovering. When he faltered, hands shifting faster than his eyes, she tapped the metal frame twice. He slowed. After a dozen cars, the lane settled into a smooth click. He was starting to feel where judgment lives, in the pause between what you expect to see and what's actually in front of you. A black SUV approached in the inbound lane. Maddie didn't look away from Noah's hands until his check was clean, then turned. The SUV stopped, window down. Commander Briggs sat behind the wheel, sleeves rolled, eyes like usual, present, measuring, not theatrical. He offered his ID. She took it because that's what the post required: scanned, matched, and returned. No shortcuts, not even here. He stepped out. The checkpoint air tightened a notch. Noah straightened, then checked himself and kept working his lane. Good. Briggs closed the door and came the 3 steps to stand in front of her. No speeches, not here. He lifted his hand in a salute, exact as the first time, but somehow lighter, like the gesture belonged to both of them now. Maddie returned it, angle perfect. The world didn't go silent so much as it aligned, tires humming, radios clicking, a gull crossing the Florida sky. He lowered his hand. "Keep teaching the sequence," he said. She answered, "Yes, sir." He looked to Noah, who never stopped scanning, and gave a small nod that would power a young private for months. Then he got back in the SUV and rolled through like any other vehicle that had business on base. The moment rippled along the fence line, but it didn't break the rhythm. That was the point. Respect wasn't a siren, it was a current. Maddie ran the inspection, checked the logs, walked the perimeter for a bolt that sometimes worked loose near the far post, and signed the sheet. On the way back, Noah finally spoke. "How do you not shake when he does that?" She kept her eyes forward. "You can shake later. While you're here, you do the job." Echo 1-2 took her back into its cold light and steady hum. She squared her chair, logged the inspection, and closed 2 minor loops no one would ever hear about. Elena pinged a message, "You at the gate when the UFO landed?" Maddie replied, "SUV." Elena sent 3 eye rolls and a heart. The day rolled, uneventful in the way that meant everything worked. At 1600, Holloway set a slim folder on her desk. "You're rotating back to the gate twice a week. Formal. Train the new class. Command wants your checklist, not your autograph." She wrote the schedule block on a sticky note and stuck it to the corner of her monitor. "Copy." He added, almost as an afterthought, "Good fit." Coming from him, it sounded like a stripe. When the sun dropped, Maddie took the long way to the barracks. The fence threw long shadows, and the flag snapped twice like a metronome. She touched the steel frame at the booth, once for day 1, once for the day she learned what a salute meant, once for the morning the sequence bent and didn't break. Back in the room, Elena was half asleep, phone face down. "How far did your story reach today?" Maddie set her cap on the locker. "Far enough to matter to the right people." Elena made a sleepy sound that meant she'd heard. Lights out, the base settling, Maddie lay on the thin pillow and counted the steps she'd take tomorrow just to see if the number felt right. It did. She didn't picture medals or ceremonies. She pictured a board clean at 0600, a hallway where no one waited for a room that didn't exist, a recruit who slowed down because he trusted the process more than the pressure. She pictured a commander who saluted not to make noise but to say, "Do it like this when nobody's watching." The lesson was simple and heavy at the same time. Discipline in detail is discipline in battle, influence is the quiet that remains when the noise stops, respect arrives when you're too busy to chase it. Maddie closed her eyes with those sentences lined up like columns on a page. Outside, Ridgeport kept its heartbeat, constant, unfancy, exact. Inside, her hands felt steady enough to hold the next small decision and then the next, so the big things would keep standing where they belonged. Tomorrow would test the sequence again. She was ready.